out where we're headed in our time together. For those of you who are much more linear than I, this is the only sequential thing that will happen today. For those of you familiar with Myers-Briggs, I am off the charts INFP, which means I don't care about rules and I'm all over the map. But I'll behave today because I'm in the United States of America. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time framing our reality, again, recognizing that for some of us we're parachuting into this conversation. Where do we find ourselves today? Spend just a couple minutes on terminology. I will say, though, that language usage in this conversation changes at the speed of light. And even for someone like myself immersed in this conversation on a daily basis, I find it hard to keep up. So we will touch on that, but we're going to be really gracious with each other because we're all learning today, right? Spend a bit of time talking about contextual ministry and what makes Neeland unique in this journey. And then discerning readiness for dialogue in the sense of how do we have this conversation within this community, within the Christian Reformed Church? How do we find open doors for more healthy conversation together? As Jody so helpfully reminded us, 2002 was asking us to do that already then. And I was barely alive in 1973, but I understand that even that committee had a number of different perspectives and really had to dialogue together. Unity and diversity. So what ought to energize us in this conversation? Sometimes I say my biggest job is to cultivate non-anxiousness in the church in this conversation. That I spend most of my energy trying to think about how we can diminish or diffuse anxiety. Because when we are at peace and when we're able to be free from fear and anxiety, we're much more able to have difficult conversations. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about generous spaciousness and try to sell all of you my book. And then hone in a little bit more around what skills we might need to have dialogue together. Talk about some spiritual practices that will sustain us in this journey. There's an RCA church that their senior pastor made some bold announcements in this arena of engagement, and it shocked the community. And so they are sort of in this energized time of chaos. And one of the things that I was brought in to talk with them about were the spiritual practices that would help them walk this out. Because this conversation is never a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's not just a conversation about LGBT matters, it's really about how do we be the church. So, does that sound all right? Linear people? Yeah? All right. Yes. Well, Rhonda, if I tell people coffee's ready, I've lost them. No, in all seriousness, if your travel mug is, just crying out to be filled, look after your needs, blah, 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 interrupt everything, go get coffee.